Hello guys, my name is Spiros Katsis and today we're going to see how to send an email in C#. And by sending an email I don't mean how to set up the external email service, for example SendGrid, and to send the email, but how you should treat your emails. Let's go and see what do I mean. I have an API with a post endpoint and it accepts an order. The order object is actually empty, and here is my logic where I place the order, I do all the fun stuff, and then I send an email. That could be done by publishing an event, but in our example I just handle that in here. I send the email by calling my external email service. As we said, that could be SendGrid or something else, and I pass as parameters the subject, the body, and the address of the recipient of that email. And if we go to my external email service, it just returns false, because in our example that email service returns true or false, representing if the email sent successfully or not. Now, what's the problem here? Okay, we placed the order, everything is set up, and in the next days we will ship that order. But what if the external email service didn't actually send the email? We didn't notify the user about that order. That's something that we obviously don't want to happen, and we can have a retry policy with Polly, for example, and actually there is a great video from Nick Chapsas about retrying with Polly, and I'll post a link in the description. But even with retries, if that service is down, we can retry 2, 3, even 4 times and we may not succeed. So how we wanna treat this, what we're gonna do? Okay, in my models folder I have, except the empty order class, I have an email class. And in here I have some properties. I have the recipient of the email, the sender, the subject, the body, and I also have an email status. It's an enum that I have implemented over here, and it has 3 values: pending, sent, and failed. I also have an allable nate time called last attempt and an integer called retry times. You obviously can have more properties, but for our example I keep it as small as I could. And I also have a persistence folder with an app.db context. It's not actually DB context, it's an in-memory list of emails, but since it's a list we can use with links, so we can have an experience similar to Entity Framework. Okay, now let's go and handle that email as we should in my services. I create another one, I will call that email service like that, and in here I will inject the external email service, so private read only I external email service, and also my iapp.db context. So private read only iapp.db context, let's call that context, I like it better. Let's inject them through the controller. Okay, and now we'll have our send method. So public void, this could also return a bool or something else, let's keep it simple. So send, and we will have as a parameter an email model. Okay, and now we haven't actually tried to send the email, so let's set that email status to be equals with pending, and now let's try to actually send that. So var result equals with external email service dot send, and we have to pass the subject, the body, and the recipient. Okay, now we made our try, so we need to update the status based on the results of that try. So we can say email dot status equals, and if result is true, we'll set that to send, otherwise to failed. Okay, and now we will add it to our database and we're going to see why. So context emails dot add email. Okay, now we have a record of that email and if it was actually sent or not. So we can have a background service that checks our records, and if an email hasn't successfully sent, we can retry that. Now I will create a new folder. I'll call that tasks, and in here I will have my background task. You can use Quartz or something else to set it run every 15-30 minutes, 1 hour, and to actually avoid having a second instance of the task running before the previous has completed. But in our example, just to keep it simple and short, we will use the built-in background service in the ASP. So let's create that email task. Alright, and it will be inherited from the background service. So background service, okay, and let's also inject our service provider so we can take our required service for that task. So private read-only I service provider. Okay, and now let's go to our execute method. Let's make that async. Okay, and now we want to say while true so that it will keep running. Okay, now let's get our services. So using var scope equal with service provider create scope. Okay, we will need our context so we can iterate through the emails that haven't been successfully sent. So var context equals with scope.serviceprovider.get required service of type I app tb context. Okay, and we also need to take the external email service so we can retry send those emails. So I external email service, and let's call that email service. Okay, now we need to take those failed emails. So var emails equals with context dot emails, and where the status equals with failed, so an email status failed. And if you noticed, in my email class I have retry times, because maybe if an email fails for, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 times, you need to handle different and not retry sending again and again. So we can also add here that we want those emails that the retry times is smaller than let's say 4, or let's write it even better so it will be read nicely, smaller or equal to 3. Okay, that 3 obviously you don't need to hard code it in here. You could have it in your configuration or somewhere else. So okay, now that we have the emails, let's iterate over them. So for each email in emails, we will actually have to increment by 1 the retry times, because we will try to send that again. So email.retry times plus plus. Now we need to try send that, so var result equals with email service dot send, and again we will pass the subject, the body and the recipient. Okay, maybe we also need to update the last attempt, so email dot last attempt equals with date time dot now. Okay, and now if the result is success, we need to say to update the status, so to be with equals with email sent. So email dot status equals with email status and email status dot send. And now let's set that to run every, I don't know, let's say 10 seconds, so we can debug that later. So task dot delay for 10 seconds, and let's pass the stopping token as well. And now before we go and debug that and see that it works, let's go to our endpoint. And now we don't need that external email service but our own email service, so let's change that to email service. Let's rename that, and now we need to pass a new email, so new email with subject equals, let's call it subject, body, let's call that body, and let's do for the recipient the same thing. Okay, so what we did now, we ensure that even if that email failed the first time, we will actually notify the user that their order has been processed. And that's not something you want to do only with emails, obviously, but with every part of that continuation of placing that order. For example, one part of that process will be that after you persisted the order in the database, you want to publish an event to notify the transportation company about the details of the shipment. If for some reason the listener didn't get that event, you don't want to continue with the process and leave it as it is. You want again to store that failed event somewhere and try to publish that again. Having said that, let's go and debug our application. Before that, let's actually add our new email service. So let's do that. Mail service and our hosted service, so builders.services.add hosted service, and that would be our email task. Okay, let's start our API. I have already a post request ready to that order endpoint. I'll hit it, I get back at 200. Okay, and now let's go and put a debug in our email task, and let's wait for a little. Okay, we hit that breakpoint. Let's go and see now in our emails we have an email, and actually we already retried one time before we hit that breakpoint. It's okay. So now let's continue. We will iterate through that emails. We will get that first and only mail. We will increase the retry time, so we will update the last attempt. We will try to actually send that, and as you can see, it failed again, obviously. So in 10 seconds that will try again. Okay, that's all I had for this video. Thank you for watching and have a nice one.